Start and then we'll pass it off. Okay, so I'd like to call this meeting to order, special meeting of the village board. It is 6:34. Has this meeting been publicly noticed?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
Thank you. All trustees are present except trustee Backhorst, who is absent. So I will hand it over to our budget chair, trustee Menta, to talk about budget wrap-up.
Well, we're here to finish up, finally. I'd like Mark to just talk about a little bit, I know we had at least one number change with the state transportation aid, so can you just summarize, any changes from the last time?
Well, I put a handout with under everybody's agenda packet today. It's labeled Summary of 2019 Budget Staff Updates. This is a normal thing. There's a number of factors that new information comes in from the time that the budget was drafted in mid-September until now. So just to kind of summarize that, I didn't number them on this page, but I'll just go right down the list. You know, the first line there shows us where we started as far as the levy impact, and 6.4% beginning point for us to work on the budget.
Sorry, did that go up? I know you sent us an email that we started there, but then we had like 150,000 more.
Yeah, we'll work through the end of the
Okay,
sheet, and I'll give
okay.
you the new ending number. A couple items in the village manager's budget then, shared revenues were just a little bit higher than anticipated, and again, its proposed budget has a column, and then the amount in the revised budget has another column, and the one in the middle is the change. Expenditure restraint was a little less than expected, so still a lot of people participating in that program. There's clerical adjustment in the police office supplies. As we discussed through our deliberations, we've come to realize that police officers are no longer participating in checking permitted parking. That is strictly a community service officer task, so that's $28,260 back to the police department. TRICOM fees and other public safety were a little higher, $3,600 higher. North Shore Fire Department fees were a little bit less, $10,777. The big and unanticipated change was transportation aids. They came in almost $73,000 less than last year. Once I got that information, I did do some backtracking and can conceptually to see why that happened.
Which is?
A construction year had fallen off the 6-year history from back in 2012, I believe, and next year we'll have a new construction cycle on, so we anticipate that number to bounce back next year, assuming the same funding formula will apply. Clerical error in our calculation for charges for services to the school in public works, $3,150. Refuse allocation trend adjustments, $16,800 to the good. A number of adjustments to on page 78 there, if you're kind of following down the line, debt stabilization number with the final 2018 actual bond proceed data went from 331 down to 253. Doesn't have a levy impact, but it's going to show up in the budget as a change.
Meaning there's less that we need to utilize out of our general reserves?
Correct. The legal fees provisionally put in TID 5, $50,000. We've had clarification on that, and the majority of those fees were reserved for a use that is not applicable, so we adjusted that down to $10,000. When we did some transitions in the parking utility, all the Duncan fees were removed, and that was incorrect. We still need about $6,000 of Duncan fees in the parking utility for some of their online activity fees. The counterpart to that,
Does that mean that there's permit transactions that occur in our lots online?
that's correct.
Is that what that 6,000 is for,
Mhm.
those transactions?
Yep.
So do we order permits online? And do they do for parking lots?
You register your license plate online.
Mm.
Yep. The notation that correlates with the police officers for parking is also noted here. Again, there's no levy impact, but there's two sides to that equation, so again, just for transparency, I listed that out. With the board's recent adoption of some health insurance changes in opt-out system that resulted in almost $30,000 of budgetary savings.
Which is one person? Is that one person?
Two.
Two.
We did get our workers' comp rate modified back down from 1.8 to 1.68. Thanks to the work that Tyler put in with our insurance carriers. So that's a $22,175 savings to budget. The same thing applies in utilities, but there's no tax levy impact. And since tax levy is the metric that we're really tracking, I put a 0 there just for easy math on that. So total staff changes and staff updates increase the beginning baseline by 48,683 to a new net change in tax levy of 779,104, or a total tax levy of 12. In the yellow box there, 12,197,410. And just before I lose my place, you'll see on the spreadsheet behind me that the number on row 46 now in this worksheet that I've got has been updated to reflect that number as we work through our changes today to try to see where we can go in comparison.
I had a question, police, can you talk to me about police officer allocation to parking? So we moved a certain amount of revenue out of parking to the general fund, correct?
No, what has been the traditional methodology is that we have assumed that police officers were supporting enforcement of permitted on-street and off-street parking. We had some discussions after the budget was released, realized that that is not the case. So it is no longer appropriate for us to charge back police time, officer time, to the parking utility to support that enterprise because they really aren't doing the services.
So why is there still 25?
That's the community service officers who are doing the enforcement activity.
So the only thing left in the utility is the village-owned lots, right? That's in the parking utility.
Well, that's a discussion that has to be approved tonight, but that's, I expect that to kind of go that way.
Approve that.
Oh, yeah, I thought we already approved that. It's not on the list, is it?
Yeah, it's the first item on the list.
Okay, so when we talked about that before, it was 104,000 in revenues, but then there were also some, I guess what I'm asking is, on the allocation at the appendix at the back of the budget, is that gonna look, for this police, is that gonna look different than it looked last year?
The police don't allocate their time like we do with administrative staff,
We don't have.
management staff, so we do a cross-charge, it's called expenditure charge to others at the bottom of the police department budget. So that's what's being updated.
Really? So you're charging less to the parking utility and keeping more in the general fund, right?
Was it a
Right,
positive?
because the police officers, the regular police officers just don't do parking enforcement, and we had been charging that.
What's the net gain from moving the parking utility, moving the on-street parking out to general fund, and now taking away the officer that was mischarged? So what, was there a net?
Well, at this
positive?
point, it'll be $104,000.
That's the positive
Because
difference?
the officer charge was erroneous and needs to be corrected either way.
Okay,
And then, the preliminary proposed budget already included the shift of those Duncan fees from the parking utility to general fund, so compared to what we've been presented,
Which-
it's $104,000.
so could you just lay out the cost, cause the 60,000, we never got we never finalized that. So for the parking utility, if it was left in the utility, that 60,000 in those Duncan fees, when you register, could have come out of the utility. You didn't want it that way, but I do remember having that discussion. So if it was left in there, can you just tell me the components? So by transferring it out, we gained how much into the general fund?
Transferring what?
From the on-street parking component.
$104,000.
And then, by doing that though, we're losing that, you're not gonna agree, but 60,000, and then,
Is
so
that
it's
net of the
34.
60,000? Is that net of the cost?
Again, those items are already reflected in your calculations, so I didn't re-net them.
And the CSO time to enforce
That's what we
on-street parking.
covered, right? The CSO time is still in the parking utility, only the uniformed officer time was removed.
but it shouldn't be just in the parking utility, because they also,
Well, somebody
Am I saying
has
this
to be
wrong?
enforcing on the street.
Right.
CSOs,
so do you
not
cross charge that
uniformed.
back to the general?
Those are civilian staff. They're not uniformed officers.
So that cost was transferred out. Some CSO time was transferred out of the parking utility to the general fund.
No.
Does it apply to that part, to that type
No,
of part?
only the uniformed officer time was transferred. The .25 FTE uniformed officer that was being charged to the parking utility and the expenditures charged to other line item, we've determined that was being done so in
So
error.
you took the revenue and left the expense, is what happened. So why did we do that when, you know, you made a big point of that, the 60,000, you're trying to match revenue and expenditures to where the user fee is. So logically, if we're transferring on-street parking revenue out of the parking utility, you logically would then take some of the expense and transfer it out. But you did.
Drive our
Well,
general
when we-
budget.
when we
I know it
reviewed-
was, but that's why I wanted to keep it in the parking
Is it-
utility, so.
When we reviewed our metrics, we felt that 4 hours a day was still an applicable amount of time for CSOs to charge the parking utility. And that's what the .5 FTE equivalent, that's spread across multiple CSOs, but
But that's, so let me just try to rephrase it one more time and I'll give up, okay? That expense was that's their entire salary for these community officers, right? So that it's in the parking fund. So,
no, it's in the police department budget.
so 25,400 is half of their, what is it?
25% of all CSO expense.
So so 25%,
there's two
so
CSOs.
75% of their salary is in the general fund.
Yes,
And he had been charging part of a police officer to the parking utility, and now they're saying, no, that has to also stay in the general fund.
Right.
but that's because the police officer isn't doing the work that we thought.
I understand.
It's nothing to do with it, that would have changed
Regardless.
regardless.
It's just odd to me that we lowered the workload in the parking utility because we took out on-street parking enforcement, yet the salary stayed the same. That just, I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, again, I reviewed the metric and it's about 4 hours a day enforcing lot permits.
Well, it's
I
not,
think
because
that's a-
1/4 of the CSO time is not in the parking utility anymore, it's in the general fund.
Just a quarter?
3
A
quarters.
quarter, I thought 3/4 of the CSOs is in the parking utility, and 1/4 is now in the general fund.
No, the opposite.
Yes, yeah, because there's 2 CSOs, so .5 FTE is 1/4,
Is in
so
the
it's 2 hours per shift.
That's not right. Or if that's all that's in the
No, that's in the general
in
fund.
the general fund, most of the time is giving on-street parking tickets. We make $500,000 a year in on-street parking tickets.
That's why 3/4 of their time is in the police department.
So it's in the general fund, so, okay.
Yes,
Oh, it's 3/4
It's
in
the
the general
opposite.
fund and only 1/4 in the parking utility.
That's correct.
Okay. but then none of the police officer time, all of the police officer time is in the general fund because they don't do any parking.
They don't do any permit enforcement, that's correct. They'll obviously write citations for loading zones or hydrants or whatever it is they
Yes.
see, but they don't have the equipment to even tell who's permitted, so they don't do any permit enforcement.
Even though during the day for the art, so around the university, you know, we have those congested areas, who enforces that?
The CSO,
And those are on street, right?
that's correct.
So is the point that you're trying to make, is it to protect, what would be the, so if we go, so say it's point counterpoint, right? And I'm not questioning whether it's right or wrong, but the way you're describing it, President Rezek, what would be the advantage to what we're trying to accomplish tonight?
Yep, I think I
Does
can
that make
answer it.
sense?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's why I asked for the net gain, because the $60,000, that was originally, he is correct, in our budget as transferred out of the parking utility,
Mhm.
which is a $60,000 cost to the general fund. And so,
The revenues or the Duncan expenses?
it's the Duncan expenses. Okay, the 60,000 for that single overnight parking passes. So, to me, those are on-street enforcement. And so I was worried if we transferred out of the parking utility on-street enforcement, that we would be left with that 60,000. So I wanted to make sure that it was a net gain to our general fund rather than a net loss. It sounds like it is.
Yes,
And
it
then-
definitely is.
Well,
Next
what
one.
about if someone's parked at 3 a.m.? That's the police writing a ticket for that person, is not, there's not CSOs on the job in the middle of the night.
That's when
Sure.
they
Yes,
work. That's who goes around and gives all those tickets.
Oh, it's not a police officer,
No,
it's a
CSO.
So Mark, I'd ask, in the original budget, the utility fund balance was going up 68,000 in parking. What's the approximate revised number?
The calculation now with the adjustments, the staff updates, if the group, and I know we've had a lot of discussion, but for my purposes, I wanna go one through and just get definitive group action that this is the preparation for the final proposed budget
Yeah,
that I
we're
should follow.
making decisions tonight.
And then, the utility would be within about $10,000, it would be about $8,500 deficit for the year,
So it's pretty close to balanced.
which is pretty close to break-even levels, and there are, again,
So you move
Sufficient
60,000 out
reserves.
of the parking.
to handle those fluctuations, and all parking sales, of course, are estimates, because we just don't know with the turnover in the community, who's gonna park where. and for
We
how
just
long.
never had the revenue in the parking utility. That's why that 60,000 would have put us at $70,000 in the hole. Is that correct? If it was left in the parking utility.
You mean, I believe the number that's transferred to general fund for expenses was 48,000 to the police department. But yes, that would have been,
Right.
again, a disconnect with the process there.
Okay.
So the parking utility is still effectively neutral on budget with this action. If the group wants to direct staff to make that adjustment, I can type $104,000 in this box here and give you a new total.
I would make a motion to approve the shift in the parking utility, transfer the non-lot revenue items to the general fund for approximately $104,000.
Non-lot revenue. Okay.
Second.
And can I just ask, where does that revenue come from? I thought all the revenue went to the general fund anyways.
A lot of revenue went to the parking utility.
But you
Now that
already,
we're redefining,
you already moved the related expenses out, correct?
yes, for simplicity. It's not, again, it's not how I view it, but effectively, I think as a group would see it, yes.
we've already
Yes.
taken half this action, we just
Yes.
haven't moved the revenue part.
Yes.
The
Okay.
rest of the revenues, the other 350,000 is already going into the general fund from parking tickets, correct?
We're not talking about parking tickets, we're talking about parking permits. Permits for on-street parking.
Yeah, what, trustee Warren?
Oh, no, I was not.
Oh, I thought you raised your hand.
No.
Okay. Any other comments about the motion to, move $104,000 in revenues from the parking utility to the general fund?
I am gonna vote no, but it's okay, you know, I think the majority is gonna vote yes, so. Only because we're changing parking this year, we may be changing parking, and I feel like next year would be the time to tackle that. So we have a full understanding of ins and outs and how that's gonna affect any decision that we make in the future, which I'm just not clear, but, and I also am concerned that I would like to build that parking utility reserve. What is the cash balance right now?
I am not exactly sure, but it's several $100,000.
Right, it's like I think it says 7 something, but then it's some of it's assets.
Some of that's assets.
So we might be doing meters, and that's a way to pay for them. So instead of coming out of general fund, so anyways, I'm gonna vote no just because I would like to wrap up parking all at one time.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Any other votes?
So,
Okay, so that's $104,000. I'd like to just go down the list. Did you have something else? I'd like to just go down the list.
okay, but you didn't, go ahead.
I didn't have what?
Go ahead.
Okay, transfer to water utility for cost recovery, is that the hydrant fee?
Mm-hmm.
That's the hydrant fees. Now, the overall rating on this item was a C.